Chris, can you tell us what kind of the purpose, what is the reason of that documentary? What happened?
Oh, in terms of what happened, yeah. So, well, it's basically an incident which happened to myself and my colleagues back in 2012. So it's just over 8 years ago now. And yeah, to put it quickly, it's quite difficult. But yeah, essentially, the boat we work on operates with what's called a dynamic positioning system, which is a series of thrusters which holds the boat in one position above the seabed. So we don't drop anchors or anything like that. We just rely on all these computers and these thrusters to hold the boat in one place to allow us to work on the seabed. And we need the boat to stay in one place because we are attached to it by umbilicals. So we go down each day in a diving bell. So on the day in question, we were diving at about 91 meters, I think. So the bell would probably be lowered to about 81 meters on a wire. And there's a main umbilical which goes down to the diving bell and supplies the bell. And in turn, 3 umbilicals, one for each of the divers, with breathing gas, with hot water, because it's very cold down there. So we get a hot water supply, which is pumped around our suits to keep us warm, electricity to power a torch and a camera on our heads. The gas we breathe is actually helium and oxygen mix, so that's very expensive. So that's sucked back to the surface. There's another hose for that, so they can recycle it and save a bit of money. So it is literally what it sounds like. It is an umbilical. It is a lifeline, literally. And so for that reason, and also for operational reasons, in terms of using cranes and things like that, the boat needs to stay in one place at all times. So what happened essentially on that day is we had a catastrophic single point failure of that system, of the dynamic positioning system. It was about 10 o'clock at night. It was fairly rough. It was about 35 knot winds, I think, and about a 6 meter swell. So fairly typical for the North Sea, to be honest, but nevertheless, it's not really flat calm, that's for sure. And in those circumstances, in the pitch black, the bridge suffered this catastrophic failure. All their screens went black, and they basically lost control of the boat, and it started to drift away uncontrolled, like a sailboat, really. So at the moment that happened, there were 3 of us in the water. We work in teams of 3. One of the team of 3 always stays in the diving bell every day. It's a position we rotate every day, but on that particular day, it was a guy called Duncan Alcock, who was in the bell. And then in the water were myself and my friend Dave Uasa. So we were working within a structure, sort of a manifold, which is on the seabed, about the size of a house. To give you a bit of context, and we were sort of deep within that when we heard these alarms going off in our helmets. We have a constant line of communication up to a dive controller who tells us everything that's going on and feeds us our instructions all day long, really. It is just paint by numbers, really. We do as we're told. But in the background, we could hear these alarms, and it was a strange one, because we hear alarms quite a lot because often they're testing and things like that, but there was something about the tone of his voice and so on, which told us that this wasn't a drill or anything like that, but there was something more serious happening, although we didn't really understand what. And to cut a long story short, really, we sort of made our way out of the structure, and whilst we were trying to get back to the diving bell, which was obviously moving away from us in a direction and a place we didn't know, it's pretty much pitch black dark down there. My umbilical, which comes from the diving bell, is attached to my waist and then feeds my diving helmet. We wear a sort of 20 kg diving helmet. That became snagged on something at such incredible speed that I was powerless to do anything about it, really. And I effectively at that point became an anchor for a 5,000 ton vessel, really. And there's obviously only ever going to be one winner in that. And eventually the umbilical itself stretched to the point of breaking and snapped, and I was left behind. And we talked briefly there about running out of gas. That's something we never worry about when we're diving, because we have this essentially infinite supply which comes down through our umbilicals with multiple backups in the event of any kind of failure. But to have your umbilical severed is pretty much unprecedented, and that left me just with the emergency supply which we carry on our back. Which when I lost my sort of standard supply, we have a knob on our helmet which we turn, which opened this emergency supply. And at that depth, about 91 meters, I think we calculated, I think the film makes it out to be about 5 minutes, but the truth is it's probably more like 7 or 8 is probably the real truth. But depending on how quickly I breathed it down, which I'm sure you're going to want to talk about a bit. 7 or 8 minutes. And the boat was completely out of control. They were unable to get back to help me. And I sort of hung around on the seabed really for those 6, 7, 8 minutes, realizing fairly quickly that they weren't going to be able to get to me. That my chances, it dawned on me fairly quickly that my chances of rescue were pretty much non-existent when I realized the bell was no longer there. And eventually passed into unconsciousness. And it was nearly 40 minutes later, but the boat was able to regain control, and they were able to bring it back to me and come down and drag me back to the bell. And and they pulled me in, gave me a couple of breaths, and I came around, which sounds miraculous, And I think the reason the film was made really was because all of this is on film. We have cameras on our hats, and there's also a remotely operated vehicle in the water with us, which was able to film all of this and got back to me long before the boat was able to. So there's quite a bit of harrowing footage in the film of me, sort of twitching and writhing, and then eventually stopping twitching and writhing on the bottom. And to all intents and purposes, my colleagues all assumed, for good reason, that I was dead. And so that's it really. Yeah, that was the basis of the film.